So where do you put your thumb when you're learning guitar?
Remember, no matter how hard you press, there are no strings back here.
You put your thumb where it feels comfortable.
That's what your father said last night.
Keep your thumb behind the neck, so it's going to be more like this.
Woohoo, right back here. You want your thumb to be straight up and down on the back of the guitar.
Your thumb is pointing this way.
It should not be sideways.
You want to be able to place the thumb on the back of the neck.
But for a beginner, this is not the best position because it really limits your range of motion.
With so many guitar lessons on YouTube, it can be overwhelming as a beginner trying to learn from the ground up, especially with so much conflicting information. In this series, we're combining the best lessons from the best teachers on YouTube without any of the filler. There are links in the description to all of the YouTube channels we're referencing. So please visit their channels, subscribe, and watch their full videos because they're all doing great work.
The correct answer is that you put your thumb where it feels comfortable.
Tickle my bum with the mannequin thumb and a bongo drum in California.
Okay, let's start with some open chords. Now, for beginners, I recommend that you keep your thumb in the top half at the back of the guitar neck. Okay, so if you imagine like a halfway line down the back of the neck, you want to keep your thumb between that middle line and the top of the neck. Okay, and the reason I recommend that, no matter what chord you're playing, whether it's a D chord or an A chord or an E chord or a G chord, your thumb's going to sit more or less in the same spot. Okay, and the reason that I think that you want to be doing that instead of kind of wrapping your hand right around early on is because you want to develop this muscle here between your first finger and your thumb in preparation for doing bar chords later. Okay, so for beginners, the answer is that you should keep the thumb around the back of the neck probably all of the time while you're playing your chords and stuff, okay? Until you get into doing your bar chords. Once you're hip with your bar chords and you're used to, you can see there the thumb is again in that kind of roughly behind the second finger. There's my second finger poking, just sneaking out over the top there to give you some indication. There's the finger that's doing the bar. You see thumb is roughly behind the second finger, okay? Just roughly. Now, if you've got a very long thumb, some people tend to angle their thumb back a little bit toward the neck. That's okay as well. Okay, I have mine fairly pointing vertical, but that's, you know, it's not a big deal if it's a little bit more angled like that either. That's, you know, figure out where feels comfortable for you. Now, after you've got used to your bar chords and you've got a bit of finger strength there between the thumb and the first finger, when you're playing a D chord, you might want to wrap the thumb around a little bit more so it just mutes that thicker string. So if you accidentally play the thicker string, it doesn't ring out. It doesn't have to reach over. It can, so I might want to play the F sharp note. Okay, in which case I'm kind of having to wrap my whole hand around and grab it with the thumb. Okay, so thumb's no longer even on the back of the guitar, it's around the front now. Okay, same with it. If I'm playing an F chord but using my thumb to play the bass note. Okay, instead of doing that, that would be a normal way of playing F. I might do that and you can see how high that joint is there. That's like right above the guitar neck to get the thumb to play that bass note. Okay, now when we get into doing scales, if we're doing kind of traditional scales, okay, you can see that the thumb stayed where it was, but as I moved up, the angle of it compared with the rest of my hand is changing depending on where it is on the neck. Again, there's second finger, so it's kind of roughly behind second finger. There's first finger sneaking out the back, okay? For your pentatonic scales again. Now I'm just looking at here, where it is. There's my second finger, and there's my first finger. So it's actually between my first finger and my second finger. If I'm playing the scale up and down, for bends, it's right over the top.
I found it difficult to keep my thumb at the top half of the neck when playing open chords. It was far more intuitive and comfortable to have my thumb either resting on top of the neck or hanging over the E string, and sometimes both the E and the A string, even for open chords that use all 6 strings like E and G. For bar chords, it felt better to have my thumb behind my index finger or barely between the index and middle fingers. For string bends and scales, Justin's recommendation to have the thumb over the top of the neck and changing as I moved up and down the strings worked well with my thumb, naturally wanting to point at a bit of an angle towards the headstock the more I played on the thicker strings.
Remember, no matter how hard you press, there are no strings back here. So if you want to increase your endurance or your strength, you have to work on the 4 fretting fingers. We should talk about where to put the thumb, horizontally and vertically.
Use a mirror when you practice to see if you are speaking horizontally. If you are, cool.
How do we place it? And horizontally, I suggest you try to roughly keep it between your index and middle finger. The reason for this is very simple. I always like to relax completely when I play, so if I completely relax my hand and bring it up, this is where my thumb rests naturally. So all I want to do is be as close to this position as possible when I play. Now things might vary slightly to the left or right, but this is a very good starting point. If you have a tendency to bring your thumb in toward your little finger, or maybe out here, kind of like a hitchhiker, then you really are going against the natural disposition and shape of the hand. And you're doing this at your own peril. Vertically, I like to keep my thumb around the middle of the neck. So I would have this part of the finger here, the beginning of the tip, touching the highest point of the curvature of the neck. And as a general rule, I tell my students that I don't want to see their thumb. So you can use a mirror if you don't have a good teacher, you can use a selfie camera, but make sure as you play you don't start seeing your thumb creeping up. Another great tip to know where to start, more or less, is to use an F major chord, a very simple 6-string bar chord. And most players, when they play bar chords, they are forced into a good position. These principles will work with any hand size because they follow the natural disposition of the hand. Not because I say so, but because this is what we got. We got a hand with 5 fingers and a guitar neck. As we play all across the fretboard and across the strings, then these rules might be slightly adjusted. For example, if I'm playing a scale up and down the 6 strings, I might alter very slightly my thumb height to follow the hand movement. If I'm doing a lot of bendings and vibrato, I might change my hand position drastically to adapt to the new forces at play. But when we play, so to speak, normal stuff, then these principles will serve you very well.
I can confirm that at least with my guitar, Andre is correct, there are no strings on the back of the neck. My thumb naturally rests closer to behind my index finger, rather than between the index and middle, unless I'm doing the pinch and roll or playing scales.
Okay, so this is about my optimum thumb position when I'm playing. My thumb is somewhere around halfway up the neck. This is a real good position for me, and it will vary depending on the chord shape that I'm making. Right now it's generally behind the index finger. There's my index finger over the top. It's not back here. It's not forward this way. Those are going to be really difficult places to play out of for the most part. Now some of this will vary according to hand size. If you have smaller hands, thumb position is going to be lower. If you have bigger hands, your thumb might wind up being higher because of the size. So don't worry about it. Just try to get somewhere in this range for most hands, about halfway up the neck.
I think my hands are normal size and my thumb rests closer to the top of the neck near the low E string. I tried keeping my thumb halfway up the neck, and it either made me awkwardly bend my wrist or point my thumb toward the headstock when playing open chords.
You want to be able to place the thumb on the back of the neck. Okay, this is for leverage. Okay, the hand basically wants to do this. Okay, so you want to be able to push your fingers against the thumb. So if you're doing things where the thumb is over the top of the neck, like so, and all this kind of stuff, which again initially may feel comfortable, if you take the guitar away, you'll notice that what my hand is doing is this. So I'm compressing all these, I'm crunching all these muscles right here, I'm overstretching these muscles, and it makes the whole thing feel really awkward. What I really want to do is try to keep my wrist straight. When you are finding the position for your fingers, if you set the thumb on the back of the neck like this, notice how much I can swing my hand. Right? I can push my fingers way far forward, I can pull them back, I can do all kinds of things like that. I find personally that trying to keep the thumb perpendicular to the neck is the most comfortable and the most effective. So if I pull that into this position here and I turn my fingers like so, I notice 2 things. One, my fingers are on an angle from the guitar. They're not straight across like this. They're angled. Okay? That's going to help me out when I go to play chords. Because now my fingers want to come in together and be next to each other. Now they're next to each other when you're doing chords like this, but notice how much I have to stretch these out.
Like I did your mom last night.
right? If I've got my elbow out here and I'm trying to keep my forearm perpendicular to the neck and my fingers parallel to the frets, it's a very, very awkward stretch.
Yeah, that's what your mom said last night.
Because the fingers don't want to necessarily work this way, but they do want to work this way, if that makes sense. Now, occasionally, yes, I have found it to be perfectly acceptable to let the thumb come over the back of the neck like this. There are certain chords, especially when I'm playing an acoustic guitar, where the necks might be a little thicker. I find that to work because the neck itself nestles right in this curve of the hand, so that's a very comfortable place to be, and my wrist is still straight. Okay, so remember, you've got a lot of play here to figure out the exact position of where you want to put your fingers. And when you find that sweet spot, and it really is a sweet spot, you'll find it takes almost no effort to press down on the strings and get a decent sound.
Kevin's suggestions worked for me except when it came to scales. Then I found that slightly angling my thumb 15 to 20 degrees toward the headstock and tilting it inward worked best. Angling my fingers for making chords worked well for me.
So where do you put your thumb when you're learning guitar? I'm going to tell you, it's not a simple one-size-fits-all answer. If you're sitting straight up, what you want to do is tuck your arm into your side. Let's see, can you see that? Yeah, tuck into your side. Not far back and not sticking out, but just roughly. And when I say tucking it in, not holding it with a lot of tension, just kind of gentle so it stays there. And then fit the guitar neck where your hand reaches. Don't pull your arm out like this. It's not necessary. I'm making a chord right now and I've got my thumb behind the neck of the guitar. Basically, I'm using the pad of my thumb on the neck. It's not dead center in the neck. It's slightly higher than dead center. When I make a bar chord, I bring my thumb a little bit lower like this, and then back up for an open chord. Now this position gives you the most leverage. If you're going to move your hand around like this, it's much easier to do that than if you have your thumb way up here. Also, when you're pressing between the thumb and the tips of your fingers, you get the most pressure for the least amount of effort this way. Now, a couple of variations on this. If your thumb's really long, it's probably going to be up a little bit higher, maybe even up the top of the guitar. And if it's smaller, it might be closer down, a little bit lower. The other thing is I see some people put their thumb this way. Nothing wrong with that. If that works for you, that's fine as well. I tend to have my thumb straight up and down, but this seems to work for others just fine. I'm using as little amount of pressure as I need to press the thumb and the fingers together, just enough to get a good sound. If I release slightly, my thumb would just fall off. I'm not holding it up tight. And this helps you to play for longer periods of time without getting sore. I want to talk about one more place to put your thumb that you've probably seen. That's a thumb wrapped around the neck like this. But for a beginner, this is not the best position because it really limits your range of motion. It can be reserved for more techniques later, which I'll mention in a second.
Good morning, sir.
Changing the vertical thumb position between bar and open chords per Tomas's instructions worked great for me, as did having my thumb at a slight angle when playing chords.
Woohoo, right back here. See that guy? That's your thumb. For a lot of students, they do this. The thumb goes sideways. And when your thumb goes sideways, watch my wrist. Oh, see what happened? Let me put it back. So you want your thumb to be straight up and down on the back of the guitar. Watch what happens when I go to the side. Oh, I just lost all of my stretch. So a lot of you guys are losing a lot of stretch to play chords. But if you see yourself getting into waiter's pose, check your thumb first. Most likely it's your thumb. So look at that. Just watch my wrist. All I'm doing is moving my thumb on the back of the guitar, and you can see my wrist adjusting. So I tell students, here's my thumb. Play your chords. Just try it. Play your chords without your thumb. That's awkward, but you probably will realize how little, it'll help you understand how little your thumb needs to press on the back of your guitar.
Thumb in or thumb out?
Jesus Christ.
I tried pointing my thumb toward the headstock, and it made playing chords awkward and painful.
So when playing open chords, your thumb can change between two positions. One is just above the top, behind the neck, and it's pointing a little towards the headstock. This angle makes it way more comfortable. Now we've got a lot of space between the neck and our hand, giving our fingers a lot of freedom. You could also play the chords having your thumb slightly over the edge of the neck, so you can mute the lower strings you don't need. The next situation we're looking at is bar chords. For bar chords it's a little different. Put your thumb right at the middle of the neck, maybe even a little lower if you've got trouble. Now you can push your wrist a little forward so your index finger is straight, nice and straight. Now there's room beneath the neck and your hand. This makes it easy for your index finger to be straight as well. Now to single notes. This is where I see most problems when teaching. I've seen so many cramped hands, which really kills your smoothness and flow. I've got my thumb right between my middle finger and index finger, talking horizontally right now.
Use a mirror when you practice to see if you are speaking horizontally.
Vertically, my thumb is just above the center of the neck. When playing the scale up and down, I do not move my thumb along the neck. When playing heavier stuff for your fingers like bending, sliding, double stops, you should have your thumb over the edge of the guitar to make bending easier. But make sure to not put the surface of your hand on the neck. There is always room between the neck and your hand surface.
Paul's advice worked well for both open and bar chords. For bar chords rooted on the A string, it was easier to keep my thumb closer to the middle of the neck with the knuckle sitting exactly halfway up the neck.
We are here to learn about the thumb position, right? Now, if you are wondering, why would you trust me? You know, I hired top British scientists to help me figure this out.
Liar! Liar!
The most important thing is that I'm not gonna tell you what to do and what not to do. Now we can't really talk about the left thumb. So let me just grab the guitar.
2 hours later.
I'm using the very tip of my fingers to fret. And I have this nice curved position. And if you draw a line right between my second and third finger, you would find an almost perfect symmetry. Of course, it's not perfectly symmetrical because realistically, you're not playing the guitar completely relaxed.
You are allowed to relax
in it. But if I just do this, it's almost completely relaxed. But what I can see is that the thumb continues the lower arm, points up, and the rest of the fingers are collapsing. One quick disclaimer here is that if you are not a classical guitarist, that's absolutely fine. This concept is going to be helpful for you even if you're a classical guitarist, even if you play any other style of music, as long as you hold the guitar a little bit more upright, something similar to what I do here. So if you have a little bit more angled neck position, this concept can be applied to your technique. However, if you hold the guitar more horizontally like this.
Horizontally.
Stop it. Just stop doing it. You don't have to prove anything, okay? Just stop. And second of all, I don't think this concept is gonna work for you because this position already puts a lot of tension on the different parts of your body. So I'm just not sure how you could apply this idea into this position. Just slap it on. Like that. What you want to avoid is to use the tip of the thumb on the back of the neck or to extend the thumb, because the second you do this, you already feel the tension in your wrist and in your hand. Give me 1 second.
6 hours later.
Keep your thumb hidden behind the neck. You don't want to let it peek out on the top a little bit like this. Right back here. You don't want to clinch on the guitar like this because it's gonna cause some stress in your wrist and it's gonna also limit your fretting possibilities.
I tried holding my Strat like this, and other than the awkwardness due to the weight of the guitar, her suggestions worked for me. Too bad I don't have a classical guitar to test out her ideas on.
When you play a bar chord like this, your thumb position ought to be something like that. So in other words, approximately in line with the first finger. It should not be sideways. It's not good mechanics. We generally want to play with maximum efficiency unless there's a good reason on guitar. And having the thumb and the fingers in line means they can operate very efficiently with the thumb here, the fingers dancing around the opposite side of the neck. When you have your thumb sideways, you can't quite do that. You end up having to some degree, rely on some leverage from the wrist. That's not good technique, and that could easily lead to pain in future.
Keeping my thumb in line with my index finger for chords worked great for me.
Your thumb, my thumb hanging by the thumb. Most people screw this up with their thumb. Thumb begins to fatigue, and what causes this is, you guessed it, the way you use your thumb. My hands are pretty average size. And I'm serious, my thumb behind the thumb. If you find yourself squeezing the crap out of the guitar neck when you play chords and when you strum hard, you're doing it wrong. What you want to do is you want to relax the shoulder, relax the bicep of your fretting hand, and that's going to relax your whole arm, and it's going to allow the weight of your arm to do much of the work to get the strings to the frets, not finger pressure and certainly not thumb pressure. When you get it right, it feels like the arm weighs almost nothing and it's doing all the work of fretting the bar chords for you. For string bending and vibrato, you finally want to start bringing it up and over the fretboard, because that's going to let you have the leverage you need to bend strings in tune and to get a nice, clear and controlled vibrato. The moment you wrap your thumb over the neck of the guitar, and notice how my elbow comes up and away from my body as well, all of a sudden I have a lot more leverage to do it right. Whenever you're playing anywhere from fret 1 to, let's say, fret 12, you want to keep your thumb behind the middle finger, like I told you before, pointing up towards the ceiling. And the time when you might or might not have your thumb over the neck of the guitar is when you're playing past the 12th fret. Most of the time, it's going to be totally okay to have your thumb wrapped around the neck of the guitar like this, and even point sideways a little bit when you're on the higher frets, because the frets are so close together, you can still get away with it and play well. Remember, the reason why you want to have the thumb behind the middle finger as a general rule in the first place is to give your hand maximum support.
Maximum terror.
When you're playing on those lower frets where you need maximum flexibility.
Maximum overdrive.
So make sure you can do this, get in this position on those lower frets, and then when you're up high, you can pretty much do whatever you want and you'll still play well. When you're playing scales and arpeggios on the lower frets from fret 1 to fret 12, you generally want your thumb behind the middle finger pointing up towards the ceiling. The part about keeping the thumb behind the middle finger is most important when you're playing, let's say, 3-note per string scales, because it'll be impossible to get your hand in this position any other way.
That's impossible!
If your thumb is behind the index finger, forget about it.
When playing past the 17th fret on a Stratocaster, I found that my thumb didn't so much point sideways as get moved to the left of the index finger by the heel joint.
When I have my thumb over the top, I really feel like I'm able to do my bends really well. That's because when you bend, it's nice to have your thumb over the top, to have something to sort of push against as you're bending. So it's like you're kind of closing your fingers in like that, like you're squeezing a little bit. Let's say you take your thumb and you place it right in the back in the middle, like I was talking about. If you try to do bends like that, it's a little strange feeling, because you're going to be pushing the string up and bending, but you're not going to feel that opposite leverage helping you out. So you could still bend, obviously, but it's a little strange feeling.
There's gotta be a better way!
I had to find a better placement for my thumb, because I realized that I did both. I like to do faster runs and I like to do bends. So I didn't want my thumb to constantly be shifting like that. So I thought, well, let's try something in the middle here. And I ended up calling this 3/4 position for the thumb. And that's anywhere between the halfway point and the very top of the guitar, okay? So as long as your thumb is not wrapped over the top and it's not way back here, you're in 3/4 position, in my opinion, okay? So the thumb will sit like right here. Sometimes it looks like it's going over, but it's not. It's laying right on the top, or it's down a little bit. So keep an eye on my thumb now from both angles. I'll just shoot this in 2 angles, and I'll play the same solo. Watch how my thumb stays relatively in this 3/4 position. Pause right there, because some of you guys might be like, your thumb is over, but watch this. Look at it from the front. It's sitting on top right here. It's not doing this, okay? It's a big difference. Sitting on top, over the top. Okay, so let's keep it here, the top 3/4 position, and finish it up here. So I had plenty of strength when I did that last bend, just as much as I would have if I wrapped my thumb over the top. Here's another problem. If you're playing on a Les Paul, for example, and you're way up high in the higher frets, you're not going to be able to put your thumb over the top. And if you put your thumb way in the back, that's just going to be strange, right? So that 3/4 position actually remains as you reach up to the higher frets, because the Les Paul does have some issues as far as reaching the higher frets that my SG or my Jackson do not have. So that 3/4 position will get you ready for that problem as well. It's really cool.
3/4 position took me about an hour to get the hang of, and I'm not sure it's for everyone, but it's a nice compromise to avoid shifting your thumb as dramatically between playing fast runs and performing string bends.
The best position for beginners playing their open chords or Django chords is to be down the end of the neck, okay, but not flat on and not totally upright. To have a straight wrist, there's a straight line that runs through my arm, through my wrist, through my hand, through my thumb. Okay, you don't have to be in the exact center, but what I would recommend is being between the center and the top, okay, somewhere there in order to push against behind your fingers, like at an angle, back of the neck, not too far over, not too far down.
This didn't work for me playing open chords. My thumb wants to rest with the knuckle on the edge of the neck.